Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Leadership Void Podcast. I'm Enrique with my co-host Vince to bring you the best in our veteran, military spouse, and first responder community. And Vince will introduce today's guest.
Happy November, everyone. Jen Pollock is here. Guess what? Senior Vice President of Ameris Bank, Central Florida, Commercial Division, all the way from Orlando, Florida. Jen, let's start off the show. Tell us about your wonderful self.
So let's get the important parts on record. I love the Lord. I am grateful and fortunate to be where I am today. I have a extraordinary husband of 15 years who is patient beyond measure and who I lovingly call my very handy arm candy. I have one beautiful daughter who just turned 25. You know, the Lord only gives you what you can handle. And she just returned back to Central Florida to start her career. She has her master's in social work, and she is well on her way to saving the world. And I am living my best life up here on the 5th floor as we speak, Vince. So in the 5th decade of my life here.
Wonderful, wonderful to hear. And yes, the Lord is good enough to give us what we can handle, but he gets us through. So I'm glad that he's
Right.
getting you through as well. Now, tell us a little bit about Ameris Bank and your role there.
So I've been a banker for about 25 years. I gauge it based on my daughter's age. And the majority of that has been here in Central Florida. And as you may know, banking, like Orlando, is a very small world. Ameris Bank particularly came to town about 5 years ago, 2019, and came through acquisition of other banks who were ready to be sold or had to be sold in some cases. And while it's headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, it's about a $26 billion bank, so a solid regional, Southeast regional bank with offices really in Central and North Florida. We inch all the way up the coastline, all the way through Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee. I joined when Ameris came to town, really with a group of other longtime Central Florida bankers to help create the brand and share the market and the story.
No, fabulous work you have done 25 years. And let's talk about also, you did some wonderful things in the United States Army as well, right? You gave to your country. And talk about giving. What do you do to give back to the community?
We started the conversation with really this understanding of being grateful and fortunate to be where I am. I came from very humble beginnings. I joined the military really to find an opportunity for college. And so today, where we are now, I am a firm believer in to whom much is given, much is expected. And when I say that, I mean in the active verb sense of giving and expecting. And really that comes down for me to the idea of being our brother's keeper. It means in being involved in intentional actions and choices in everyday life events. So structurally, specifically, my heart bends towards veterans, kids, and truly the nonprofits that are doing the hard work, the hard community work in Orlando. I have the deep joy to be involved in the Boys and Girls Club of Eatonville specifically. Eatonville is the oldest African-American town in the United States. It's nestled in between two very affluent cities, Winter Park and Maitland. And some of this next generation's kids and leaders are coming right out of this area. And so in that work, I have the humble honor to chair the board this year for the Boys and Girls Club. And really what that means is bridging the gap in our community between what the government and grant writing gives the organization, the Boys and Girls Club, and what the actual operating costs are. And so that provides so much joy, kind of aligning the personal and the professional aspects. And then second, mostly I'm involved in Grace Community Home, or Grace Medical Home. And that is an organization here in Orlando that deals holistically with the underserved population, mind, body, and spirit, all for free for those living below the means that the average citizen does.
Wonderful work there. And I love strategically focusing on the youth because they are our future. If we can get some stuff done there, we'll see the blessings of it down the road. So thankful that you are involved in that. Now, what's on the horizon for yourself and for Ameris Bank?
It's been an interesting couple of years for the economy, for banking in general. It is, I won't get too much geeky in the weeds, but this is some good stuff here. I am on the commercial side of banking, and so I work with business owners, developers, investors, and primarily on the commercial real estate side. And so what's happening on the horizon and the end of this year and really towards 2024 is what I would call a reckoning, just because of what has gone on since COVID. And I'll try to share my personal views along with the professional views, but COVID sent everybody home, right? People had to work from home. Once people got a taste for working from home, it is really stuck. So just to give you a couple of high macro numbers, there's about $2 trillion in the United States in real estate transactions. A full 50% of that is on the banks. The banks have funded $1 trillion. 20% of that is office. So think about the high-rise office buildings that you drive by every day. Since COVID, those office buildings have been, for the most part, higher vacancy. Higher vacancy means less income for the landlords, the owners. Less income for the landlords and the owners means less ability to repay the loans that financed those properties. And so the banks are really taking a hard look at what's coming up for refinance and maturity in those, and $175 billion just in office product alone. And so banks are reserving funds. Banks are taking some losses early on those and really taking a look at how we're going to be able to refinance or work out of those. So if I haven't put you to sleep yet, kind of like when you find a roof leak in your bathroom, you get up on the ladder and you get up in the attic and you go, okay, where else? What else? Where else is the weak spots, right? And so we're doing that with not only office where the roof leak starts, right? But we're looking at multifamily apartments, we're looking at industrial, and those two were red hot during COVID, right? We had people coming from California, people come from New York. Florida is the place to be. Florida looked like an inexpensive option to all these other rich states coming in. Great weather, no state taxes. And so we couldn't build as an economy, couldn't build multifamily fast enough, right? And we were getting year over year double digits in rents. I mean, talk about this next generation who can't afford a $2,000 apartment, right? So those kinds of things are coming to their peak now. There's only so much increased rent that the market can bear, even the rich people, right, coming from everywhere else. And so the banks are really taking a look at those also. When we financed multifamily deals, these apartments, these large apartment complexes, 3 years ago, they were at high 3 and 4% interest. Well, interest rates today are 8%. Loans are on 3 and 5 year notes. These things are coming due, right? So there's going to be, not a sacrilege way, but a coming to Jesus with a lot of borrowers and bankers. And how are we going to become rational and realistic in the economy that is no one's fault except all of our making, right? So the horizon is interesting. I will say that Ameris itself is financially sound. It's a very, very good time to be boring and conservative, and we'll see this through, like we saw through the Great Recession that started in 2006, really wasn't acknowledged until 2008, and really came to a peak in 2012. So I would say hunker down, be personally responsible, be conservative, and let's be each other's brother's keeper.
Absolutely. And as your sign says behind you, we're with you. That's Ameris Bank, right? So,
Yeah.
$1 trillion through the banks and 20% these high-rise office buildings. That's very interesting perspective. And everything you shared is very, very much important for our local consumers to understand how that drives the economy from, our percentage of houses are 2-3% to now 8%, right? So there's some value add with this perspective. No, you did not put us to sleep. You actually informed our brain even much more. So thank you for that, Jen. Now let's transition. Now, as we know, the future is bright for Ameris Bank. For you, 25 years in the banking plus your stint in the U.S. Army. What do you do that helps you thrive in your professional life?
I will tell you that the older I get, the more I listen and I observe first, right? 2 ears, 2 eyes, 1 mouth, right? God didn't get the proportions wrong. We often get the order of deployment wrong, but that comes with experience. Yes, it comes with, you're talking failures, you're talking mistakes, you're talking timing, lessons learned the hard way. I would say just listening and observing. Age brings wisdom. What a glorious thing that is. I wish it would come earlier in life, but also learning from other people's mistakes is far less of a setback than repeating them yourself, I would say. And the more you discipline yourself to listen and observe before speaking or acting, the shorter the distance to consistent success and desired results. And that is just an everyday reminder.
Now, you served in the military, and now you're serving the community at large through the banking system. I'm sure that through those different periods of your life, you got some advice that were those pinnacle type cornerstone advices that you said, oh, I'm going to keep this one through the long haul. What would that be, and what would you share with an emerging leader today?
I have one. I will share with you that emerging leader teaches me every day. Every day. We think we are doing something for our children, but man alive, do they teach us about life. You're really looking at an individual who I put myself in places where there were not a lot of people who looked like me, right? The military, banking, corporate banking, and honestly, the bulk of American history is run by an older white male population. And that's just the facts. That's not an excuse. But what's interesting to me in thinking about this is, man, I wish I would have gotten some better advice. And so really talking about what advice I would pass on, I would say it's not so much about the advice that I received, but advice I would have wanted to have received. And that really comes down to, you just don't know everything. And sometimes it's more accurate to say you don't know anything when you're in a situation. But here's the silver lining. Neither does the person next to you. And that takes some time and some reflection to realize that. And so I would say advice for an emerging leader is, and really what they're teaching me to in their actions is, you should really go on the assumption of positive intent. Most people are good and most people want the best for you. Now, we don't hear about that because sensationalist news, you don't hear about the good stuff. But with that being said, I would say trust. Trust first, but verify and validate people's intentions and advice. and then remain humble inside and really just take in for yourself, absorb for yourself what's going to benefit and advance you. But again, most people are good, and that's a hard lesson learned.
No, absolutely a hard lesson learned, especially as we get seasoned, we understand and experience that even more. As a youngster, not so much, right? But I'd love to hear from you, Jen, a most memorable leadership aha moment you'd like to share with our audience today.
It may be a little controversial, but I hope not. I hope not. This whole idea, there's been a lot of conversation around mentorship, having a mentor, finding a mentor, asking for mentorship. And in my view, when we talk about that, we're always talking about the ideal, right? A mentor ideally is the one who will guide you, who will show you how to prepare for the storms ahead, who will help you navigate the puddles after that storm. They're the ones who will show you the straight and narrow path, if you will. The reality is, when you put your fate in the hands of someone else who's ahead of you, who you want to mentor you, who you want to emulate their career path, it's their vision you're following, and it's not your own. So, just a really brief example. I'll give you my example. When I got my first, I would call it big girl corporate banking job, there was only one other woman in this team, in this role, and she was about 20 years ahead of me. And so I thought, in my late 20s, I thought, that's my mentor. I'm going to follow her. I'm going to do what she is doing. I'm going to learn the ropes from her. She's successful. This is how you do it. Here's the thing. It was her way, and her way got me in so much trouble. And truly, the mentorship ended up being a tormentorship, and not through, and I want to be very careful about this, because it's not that women don't support women. It's just, when there's so few of you, it is so fraught with pitfalls that if you do not stay true to yourself, if you try to be like someone else, you are going to lose sight of who you are, and therefore you're going to lose sight of your optimal success. And so that my aha moment really surrounded that mentorship idea. And I came to understand it's more about focusing on how you show up in a situation more than why you show up. The why will reveal itself if you just remember how you show up. You show up to an interview, you show up to a networking event, you show up to connect with people. How do you show up? Do you show up ready to receive information, ready to learn information, ready to give of yourself, rather than, hey, I'm striving to be in this position for this reason, for this much money? It's just that aha moment for me was, don't follow someone else's path.
Great advice indeed, because I've seen it happen, and I know full well that those are pitfalls, especially as you have highlighted. You know, you have to be careful that you're not following somebody else's life versus yours, especially in the professional setting. Now, sometimes during these tormentors moments, right, it happens, we learn some difficult lessons. So what are certain strategies that you use with yourself or your teams when you're dealing with change and challenges?
Probably the most important word is transparency. Transparency, transparency. I'm a firm believer in servant leadership, and in that, two things resonate with me. First is clear is kind, and the second is kindness is not a weakness. And what I mean by that is, when you talk about clear is kind, ambiguity is no one's friend, right? I will say that I struggle mightily, even 30 years after being in a very comfortable military black and white setting, to a corporate gray, nuanced, you know, everything is negotiable kind of environment in the civilian world, that at the end of the day, I still come back to fewer feelings get hurt, fewer disappointments occur, fewer blindsiding events happen when you are very clear about your intentions, your actions, your follow through. And I think that is the highest form of kindness at the end of the day. And I really want to focus back to when you're talking about changes and challenges in the professional world. Remember, we're all dealing with people, people who get out of bed just like we do, people who put on their pants one leg at a time. You know, some of us still have put on skirts, that kind of stuff. But I mean, clear is the kindest form of leadership that I know of and I have come to realize. And the other thing is that kindness is not a weakness. So when you being an open book and making the active choice to be a servant leader is not equivalent to nice guys finish last. I just don't believe that. You just never know what the person next to you is going through. You don't know what their struggles were. And we know that deeply coming from a military background. You just don't know what other people have been through and what they're bringing to the corporate environment or their next work environment. And so I would say that if you remember, people will always remember how you make them feel more than what you say to them, then that will keep you squarely in a commitment to kindness. And that goes a long way when you're dealing with difficult change and difficult challenges in the workplace. And there's just nothing weak about that.
No weakness in dear. Clear is kind, folks, and you have to listen to
There's
understand, definitely, versus respond. So, Jen, great perspective, great advice. Love what you're doing in the community and for the next generation. So, folks listening in, how do they contact you or Ameris Bank?
Very simply, my cell phone number is public knowledge, 407-704-0993. If I am your banker, you have full access to me. And I am at jen.pollock, Pollock, at amerisbank.com. You can always find me on LinkedIn as well. Jenny from the bank.
All right, Jenny from the bank and not the block. I tell you what, it has been great having you. And folks, we're going to have that as part of the show notes and video for you to get a hold of Jen or all of her services through Ameris Bank. And if you want to get a hold of us at the Leadership Void podcast, the leadershipvoid@gmail.com is where you'll send that correspondence. If you want to have a speaker on the leadership spectrum on the show or a topic covered by Vince and I, you'll do that through those means.
And we're just so excited again, starting off this wonderful month of November with Jen from the block, no, from the banking area. We love that fact. And now that we also love the fact that we have great sponsors. We have VEI, Triple Nickel, and FAVOB sponsoring our show. So today is all about Jen. Thank you for being on our show. Wish you much success in your future.
Thank you. Happy Veterans Day coming up.